Hi, I'm Jeff Sturgis from Whitetail Habitat Solutions, and you'll see that I've been creating some videos for Tactacam and Reveal, and it's no surprise now that I'm actually working with them. I invite you to check out our video on my channel, Whitetail Habitat Solutions, and we have a video that's coming out soon, or it's already come out by the time you've seen this. And I talk about why I switched from Access Trail cameras, which I've been working with since 2016, to Reveal cameras. And you know, I'll run through really quick, but I invite you to check out the whole video. One is the ownership group of Tactacam are close friends of ours. Ben Stern, his wife, and his son, grilling, bear camp weekend, and spending time on ATVs, four-wheelers, lunches. You know, they're a close friend group. That's a big part of it. Jen has been using Reveal cameras since before they even came out. They were available to the public. That's how close of friends the Sterns are to her. And so I've been actually watching Jen use those Reveals for the last 2 years. And I know we have all prototypes. She has close to 20 cameras that she came with. And so I've been able to see all of them, how they work. A lot better price point for our clients and overall viewers, readers. Where clients might be able to afford a lot more expensive camera, but we have them all around across the range. So innovation, I know Ben and his team, the guys there at Tactacam, the entire team, they're always innovating, coming up with several new cameras, Tactacam and Reveal. We wanted to use Tactacam too. So the innovations per year are incredible. The amount, the clearer pictures at night, great battery life, a lot of innovations. The fact that we can use one camera for video and pictures is a really cool thing now. And we'll be integrating more and more of those videos into our own videos that come directly to us from a cell camera. So those are some of the reasons. There's actually more too, but those are just a few. So long-term contract, long-term partnership, working with friends, and a camera I'm highly familiar with. We get to look at every client. I go to, on average, about 100 clients a year, and you can imagine I get to see every single camera on the planet and what they're using, and good and bad about all of them. And Reveal has been a hot camera for the last 2 years. I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. That's why I am truly blessed to be a part. So let's move on now. 5 spots to find a shed, 5 hot spots. Well, winter food is an obvious one. Let's look back. Winter food. What is winter food? You know, winter food is a lot different than your food plot that you plant in the fall. If it's not producing and you get into this time of year and snow's melted and you're out there, if the deer haven't been hitting it all January, February, we're shooting this on February 13th, then don't expect to find a pile of sheds there. We're talking about winter food. And that doesn't mean that deer aren't necessarily in this hot spot during the fall. But a lot of times these winter food sources are different. And talking about a lot of times food plots in the area of private land. The food plots are all decimated and eaten down to the dirt. And so deer move to more hardwood regeneration, where there's been cuttings and there's regeneration taking place. Areas of upland cover that has shrubs, maybe some hardwood regeneration, briars, grasses, broadleafs, really good place. And that becomes more of a food source then. Backyard bird feeders. That's a huge, I was at a couple clients last week just at their house, and the amount of deer tracks coming into their bird feeder was just incredible. That's what they have to eat there. There's nothing else. There's nothing else in the ag fields around there. It's been cold. There's a little bit of snow. I was up in Michigan and then down into northern Ohio, and those deer get hungry and they tend to travel, and does and fawns will stick around and they'll stay close to home. They have a fraction of the home range of bucks. So they're more homebodies, where a buck is willing to travel. That's why his summer range is so drastically different than his fall. It's so drastically different from his winter. But he's willing to travel a mile or two to find good food, where does are not. So if there's another good food source in the area, that's where those bucks are be. Deer bed zones. What I mean by that is I can't just say deer bedding areas. Because when deer are hitting a food source, like we have big food right outside our doors right here with standing corn and some old brassica. So deer will come and hit these areas, and they'll establish bedding areas right on the edge of the woods that they wouldn't actually bed during the daylight. So when I say bedding area, a lot of people think, God, daylight bedding area, this is their most sacred spot in the woods. There's a lot of fence row bedding and low grass bedding that bucks bed in, and does and fawns in general, all night long. They like to be safe, social, out in the open. They can see very easily out in the open, in the dark. So they'll they'll bed in these areas, you'll find a huge collection of beds. Usually where you find beds, you find a lot of pellets. Where you find a lot of pellets, you find beds. That's either in those food sources, but especially in those bedding areas that might not necessarily be where you think back in their normal traditional bedding areas. They're going to have a bed within 200 to 400 yards and a lot closer if they can during the winter. They don't want to move that far. So if you find that major winter food source, look adjacent for those first set of beds. That's usually does and fawns. And then after that, you'll find the bucks. And they might be 200 yards away or 400 yards away. But if you're finding those beds, great place to find sheds, let alone in the food sources. Crossings, ditches, fences, and big major terrain changes where you have deer that step down. When they're stepping down a steep grade and they're sliding, their head moves around, they throw antlers. When they jump a fence, they throw antlers. When they go down to a ditch and then back up the side, a creek, river crossing, even across the road and they have to go across a ditch. Those are all areas where they knock their head around and they'll drop antlers. So a lot of times if you just speed shed hunting, you're looking where there's a lot of deer beds, pellets, crossings, in those food sources. Those are all great spots. High stem count areas. We had a video out and we probably could have titled it more like where to find a buck bed, but when you find high stem count, briars, regeneration, that type of thing, you'll find bucks. Bucks and deer in general need that browse during the winter time. Find all this together. High stem counts, crossing, deer beds, winter food, and staying away with large doe groups. I was on a client property the other day. We literally went over a bank. It's one of the biggest herds of deer I've seen in person. It was 40 to 50 deer going through the bottom. All does and fawns in an area in northern Ohio where they haven't really dropped their antlers that much. So there would have been a buck in there somewhere, but they were all does and fawns. They ran off to the neighbors. Across the fields a couple hundred yards, there's a 5-acre woodlot next to a 40-acre CRP field. That's where I would have gone to look for bucks if I was in the area to look for shed hunting. Edges of the CRP field, in that woods where there's a little bit of hardwood regeneration, maybe on the other side where there's a river system and it was thick and there's a change of habitat. Not necessarily like on the client property. They had some big hay fields that were still open, no snow on them. That's where all those does and fawns were. Those bucks do not want to be around those does and fawns. They don't do that during the summertime. They don't mingle with them. They only do during the rut. They do that in the fall. They'll still bed away from those does. They have to have room to do so. And so where you find all this taking place and then you find those large doe groups, go off to the side somewhere, find that adjacent thick cover, high stem count. And let's look at a bonus. When you get conifer, stands of conifer, and it's been a harsh winter, conifer equals thermal protection and snow hindrance protection. Snow hindrance meaning there's less snow on the ground because it sifts and evaporates through the boughs. But when you get conifer, stem count, plus winter food, big beds and big pellets, what's that mean? Big pellets and big beds, that equals bucks. When you find small beds, small pellets, big pellets, all together, that's doe and fawn family groups. So there's a big difference between those two. But when you find all that taking place, when you find good stem count, change of habitat, conifers, you find the big pellets, big beds, you find that winter food, you're going to find antlers. And especially when you find that location and it's away from some does, you know, the big does are over here, big doe family groups, and you're over here. So those are some of the hot spots I like to find sheds. We're very fortunate because there's typically that we're finding sheds, Dylan, Joe, Kevin, and I, that go out and visit clients, but we're finding sheds on 10 to 15 different parcels. A lot of times different states. We're finding 7, 10, 8 different states we're finding sheds. And our clients are finding sheds with us. So you get to develop, Dylan's not that films, he's our videographer and editor that's been editing for us for a long time, but he's not a real big shed guy, but he's finding it fun when he's on client properties to notice those sheds and see them. And you can even make a non-shed hunter out of Dylan, a shed hunter, by seeing these on our client properties. But you get to develop an eye for where they're at, and these are some of my favorite spots to find sheds on client properties, let alone my own property and other properties that I'm scouting for my own use every winter. And I hope some of these tips can help you find some great sheds this off season and beyond.